The Sultanate of Mataram (Mataram) was the last major independent Javanese kingdom on Java before the island was colonized by the Dutch. It was the dominant political force radiating from the interior central Java from the late 16th century until the beginning of the 18th century. Mataram reached its peak of power during the reign of Sultan Agung Hanyokrokusumo, and began to decline after his death in 1645. By the mid-18th century, Mataram lost both power and territory to the Dutch East India Company. It had become a vassal state of the company by 1749. Etymology. The name Mataram itself was never the official name of any polity, as Javanese often simply referred to the kingdom as Boom Jawa or Tanah Jawa. Mataram refers to the historical areas of plains south of Mount Merapi around present-day Muntilan, Sleman, Yogyakarta to Prambanan. More precisely, it referred to Kota Gede area, the capital of the Sultanate in the outskirt of southern Yogyakarta. There is a common practice in Java to refer the kingdom by the location of its capital, thus Mataram is the capital. Historically, there were two kingdoms that have existed in this region and both are called Mataram. The later kingdom, however, is often called as Mataram Islam or Mataram Sultanate to distinguish it from the Hindu-Buddhist 9th century kingdom of Mataram. Historiography. The key sources to uncover the history of Mataram Sultanate are local Javanese historical accounts called Babad, and Dutch accounts of Dutch East India Company. The problem with traditional Javanese Babad are often undated, obscure and incorporates non-historic, mythological and fantastic elements. Most of this Javanese historical account are used as the tool to legitimize the authority of the ruler. The example of a mythical element is the sacred bonds between Panembahan Senapati with mythical Ratu Kidal, the ruler of Java's southern seas, as his spiritual consort, as claimed in the Babad Tanah Jawa. The dates for events before the siege of Batavia in the reign of Sultan Agung, third king of Mataram, are difficult to determine. There are several annals used by H.J. de Graaf in his histories such as Babad Sankala and Babad Momana, which contain list of events and dates in Javanese calendar. But besides de Graaf's questionable practice of simply adding 78 to Javanese years to obtain corresponding Christian years, the agreement between Javanese sources themselves is less than perfect. The Javanese sources are very selective in putting dates to events. Events such as the rise and fall of Kratans, the death of important princes, great wars, etc., are the only kind of events deemed important enough to be dated by using a poetic formula chronogram called Chandrasenkala, which can be expressed verbally and pictorially, the rest being simply described in narrative succession without dates. Again, these Chandrasenkalas do not always match the annals. Therefore, it is suggested to follow the following rule of thumb. The dates from de Graaf and Rickhoffs for the period before the siege of Batavia can be accepted as best guess. For the period after the siege of Batavia until the First War of Succession, the years of events in which foreigners participated can be accepted as certain, but again are not always consistent with Javanese version of the story. The events in the period 1704 to 1755 can be dated with greater certainty since in this period the Dutch interfered deeply in Mataram affairs, but events behind Kraton walls are in general difficult to be dated precisely. Formation and growth. Establishment of the kingdom. Details in Javanese sources about the early years of the kingdom are limited, and a line is unclear between the historical record and myth, since there are indications of the efforts of later rulers, especially Agung, to establish a long line of legitimate descent by inventing predecessors. However, by the time more reliable records begin in the mid-17th century, the kingdom was so large and powerful that most historians concur it had already been established for several generations. According to Javanese records, the kings of Mataram were descended from one Kyajeng Sela. In the 1570s, one of Kyajeng Sela's descendants, Kyigete Pamanahan, was awarded to rule the land of Mataram by King of Pajang, Sultan Hadiwijaya, as the reward for his service on defeating Panang Sang, Hadiwijaya's enemy. Pajang was located near the current site of Surakarta, and Mataram was originally a vassal of Pajang. Pamanahan was often referred to as Kyigete Mataram. Meanwhile, in Pajang, there were major power struggles took place after the death of Sultan Hadiwijaya in 1582. Hadiwijaya's heir, Prince Benowo, was ousted by Rupangiri of Demak, and being removed to Jepang. Pamanahan's son, Sutawijaya of Panimbahan Senapati Ingalaga, replaced his father around 1584, and he began to release Mataram from Pajang's control. Under Sutawijaya, Mataram grew substantially through military campaigns against Mataram's overlord of Pajang and Pajang's former overlord, Demak. The new Pajang Sultan, Rupangiri, was an unpopular ruler, and Benowo quickly rallied support to regain his throne and recruited Sutawijaya's support against Pajang. Subsequently, Pajang was attacked from two directions, by Prince Benowo from Jepang and by Sutawijaya from Mataram, and finally was defeated. After the defeat of Pajang, Prince Benowo did not dare to stand against Senapati and agreed to bow down to him and submitted Pajang under Mataram's rule. This event in 1586 marked the end of Pajang Kingdom and the rise of its former vassal, the Mataram Sultanate. The rise of Mataram. Senapati assumed royal status by wearing the title Panembahan. He revealed the expansive nature of his reign and began the fateful campaign to the east along the course of Solar River that would bring endless conflicts. In 1586, the wealthy port city of Surabaya rose against Panembahan Senapati. Senapati, however, was unable to penetrate Surabayan defense. He then conquered Madian in 1590-1 instead, and turned east from Madian to conquer Kediri in 1591 and Ponorogo. Perhaps during the same time he also conquered Jepang and Jagaraga. He reached east as far as Pasuruan, who may have used his threat to reduce pressure from the then powerful Surabaya. After his campaign in Central and East Java, Panembahan Senapati turned his attention to the west, as he forced Cirebon and Galuh in West Java to acknowledge Mataram's overlordship in 1595. His effort to conquer Banten in West Java in 1597, witnessed by Dutch sailors, failed, perhaps due to lack of water transport. Later, Demak and Pati revolted and their forces almost reached the Mataram capital, before Senapati's cavalry managed to destroy them. Panembahan Senapati died in 1601 and entombed in Kota Ged. He succeeded on establishing a firm foundation of a new state. His successor, Mas Jolang, later known as Panembahan Sadaringkrapyak, would face further rebellion. The reign of Panembahan Hanyokrokusumo, the son of Senapati, was dominated by further warfare, especially against powerful Surabaya, already a major center of power in East Java. He faced rebellion from his relatives who were installed in the newly conquered Demak, Ponorogo and Kediri. In 1612 Surabaya again rose against Mataram. As the response, Hanyokrokusumo conquered Mojokerto, destroyed Gresik and burned villages around Surabaya. Surabaya, however, was still indomitable. The first contact between Mataram and the Dutch East India Company occurred under Panembahan Hanyokrokusumo. Dutch activities at the time were limited to trading from limited coastal settlements, so their interactions with the inland Mataram kingdom were limited, although they did form an alliance against Surabaya in 1613. Agung Hanyokrokusumo died accidentally that year when he was in Prawiroatmodjo forest, hunting for deer. He was given posthumous title Panimbahan during Prawiroatmodjo Golden Age. Panimbahan Hanyokrokusumo was succeeded by his son, Mataram. Mataram, however, has poor health and quickly replaced by his brother, Mataram in 1613, who assumed the title Panimbahan and later in 1641 took the title of Sultan Agung Hanyokrokusumo. Mataram Sultanate under the reign of Sultan Agung is popularly remembered as the apogee of Mataram's rule on Java, and the golden age of native Javanese power prior to European colonization in following century. Surabaya campaign and eastern conquests. Panimbahan was an able military general and also a warlike ambitious leader, and he aspired to unite Java under Mataram's banner. He responsible for the great expansion and lasting historical legacy of Mataram due to the extensive military conquests of his long reign from 1613 to 1646. Under Sultan Agung, Mataram was able to expand its territory to include most of Java after capturing several port cities of northern Java. Surabaya, with its strong fortification and surrounded by swamps, was still the most formidable enemy of Mataram. In 1614, Surabaya forged an alliance with Kediri, Tuban and Pasuruan and launched invasion against Mataram. In the following year, Sultan Agung managed to repel allied Surabaya forces in Warasaba. He also conquered Malang, south of Surabaya. In 1616, Surabaya tried to attack Mataram, but this army was crushed by Sultan Agung's forces in Swalan, Pajang. The coastal city of Lasem, near Rembang, was conquered in 1616 and Pasuruan, southeast of Surabaya, was taken in 1617. Tuban, one of the oldest and largest port cities on the coast of Java, was taken in 1619. Surabaya was Mataram's most difficult enemy. Senapati had not strong enough to attack this powerful city, and Hanyokrokusumo attacked it to no avail. Sultan Agung tried to weaken Surabaya by launching a naval campaign across Java Sea and capturing Sukadana, Surabaya's ally in southwest Kalimantan in 1622, and the island of Madura, another ally of Surabaya, was taken in 1624 after a fierce battle. Soon Madura's fortifications in Sumenep and Pamekasan fell. Agung installed Adipati of Sampang as the Adipati of Madura, stylized as Prince Kakranamgrat I. After 5 years of war, Agung finally conquered Surabaya in 1625. The city was taken not through outright military invasion, but instead through a siege. Agung installed a tight blockade from the land and sea, starving Surabaya into submission. With Surabaya brought into the empire, the Mataram kingdom encompassed all of central and eastern Java, also Madura and Sukadana on southwest Borneo, except for the west and east end of the island and its mountainous south. Sultan Agung consolidated his political unity by forging marriage alliance of his Adipati to the princesses of Mataram. Agung himself took the hand of Saribon princess as his consort in an effort to seal Saribon as Mataram's loyal ally. By 1625, Mataram was undisputed ruler of Java. Such mighty feat of arms, however, did not deter Mataram's former overlords from rebellion. Pajang rebelled in 1617, and Pati rebelled in 1627. After the capture of Surabaya in 1625, expansion stopped while the empire was busied by rebellions, Batavia campaign and western conquests in the West. Banten and the Dutch settlement in Batavia remain outside Agung's control. In his effort to unite Java, he claimed Mataram as the successor state of Demak and claimed Banten as Mataram's vassal as well. Since Banten was once Demak's vassal, Banten refused Mataram's claim and remained as an independent state, and to reach Banten, Dutch Batavia is on Mataram's way. The foreign rule of the Dutch in Batavia on Java's soil is seen as a disgrace for Sultan Agung's hegemony. He attempted to seize Batavia by launched two attacks against the Dutch East India Company, one in 1628 and the other in 1629. The first campaign against Batavia in 1628 was failed due to poor logistics supports for his troops. Learning from the first mistakes, Sultan Agung established Javanese farming settlements on West Java north coast, building chains of rice barns to support his troops, and Javanese ships filled with rice and logistics was sent to sail Java Sea, also to support the military logistics. Dutch ships and spies, however, managed to locate Mataram's logistics ships and rice barns and burnt them down. As the result, large numbers of Mataram troops were starved and left with poor logistics, and Sultan Agung's second invasion to Batavia was also ended in failure. Cracking down rebellions and Eastern Campaign. In 1630, Mataram crushed a rebellion in Tembayat, and in 1631–36, Mataram had to suppress rebellion of Sumedang and Nuka in West Java. Rickhoffs and de Graaf argued that these rebellions in the later part of Sultan Agung's reign was mainly due to his inability to capture Batavia in 1628–29, which shattered his reputation of invincibility and inspired Mataram's vassal to rebel. This argument seems untenable due to two reasons. First, rebellions against Sultan Agung already began as far back as 1617 and occurred in Pati even during his peak of invincibility after taking Surabaya in 1625. The second, and more importantly, the military failure to capture Batavia was not seen as political failure by Javanese point of view. After the failed Batavia campaign, Gresik tried to regain power in East Java and led a revolt that quickly cracked down completely in 1635. The Sultan also launched a holy war against the still Hindu Blambangan in the extreme eastern Java. At the time, Blambangan Kingdom was supported by Kingdom of Jelgal in Bali that treated it as a buffer against the Islamic expansion of Muslim Mataram. Blambangan surrendered in 1639, but quickly regained their independence and rejoined Bali soon after the Mataram troops withdrew. In 1641, Javanese envoys sent by Agung to Arabia has arrived home after obtaining permission to wear the title Sultan from Mecca. Mecca also sent numbers of ulama to Agung's court. His Islamic name and title gained from Mecca is Sultan Abdul Muhammad Maulana Matarami. In 1645, Sultan Agung began building Imagiri, his burial place, about 15 kilometers south of Yogyakarta. Imagiri remains the resting place of most of the royalty of Yogyakarta and Surakarta to this day. Agung died in the spring of 1646, leaving behind an empire that covered most of Java and stretched to its neighboring islands.